Okay. I was gonna do an intro where I was gonna be like, oh no, everybody, Barry's been turned to stone. Get it? Because we're talking about Dr. Stone today. That was gonna be the joke. But then I started to think, wait a second. What if Barry's not really a brick? What if Barry has been preserved in this brick form for the last few hundred, nay thousands, nay millions of years? What if he's an alien that came to this planet when it was first forged, and he's just slumbering, waiting for his time? And on a completely unrelated note, let me throw this out for you. Let's say the green light event actually does occur in our world. Like, you're outside, tending to your spice garden or whatever, and you look up at the sky and you see this big green wave, and you, as a weeb, of course, know immediately, that is the green stonification wave from Dr. Stone. What position would you go with? Would you just be like, alright, well, I have to I mean, I guess the optimal thing to do would be to lie down at that point, because you don't want to turn into a stone statue and then fall and then break apart, because there's no chance you're going to be woken up unless you use Ariha's around. So it's like, I guess the smart thing to do would be immediately, like, lay on the ground like this, so you don't fall and break. But, are you going to go like Zoro in One Piece when he was turning to wax? You're going to go tactical like that? I just want to look like a really cool statue. Like, maybe, I don't know. Alright, so it's been a while since we did a Dr. Stone video. Spoilers for this one coming up from this point onward, because we're going to be talking about the most recent arc. The America arc, of course, which I guess just kind of ended in the last one, right? I mean, like that happens every now and then. Well, I'll be, watching an anime or reading manga, and then, like, the arc will just finish in, like, 1 or 2 chapters. It'll have, like, a kind of a speedy resolution, and I'll be like, oh, okay. Like, I remember, watching Hunter x Hunter, and I kind of feel like the York New City arc in Hunter x Hunter kind of had a really quick wrap-up compared to, like, all the stuff they were setting up. So, that happens every now and then, but yeah, I guess that's what's going to happen, and it makes sense. It really does, because, yes, we got introduced to a lot of interesting characters in this arc, most notably Dr. Xeno, Dr. X, who's gonna be like, Senku's, not mentor. I mean, he was his mentor, but at this point, I think they're more of just like, you're gonna need more than one badass scientist from going on. If their goal is to build up a space shuttle, a rocket to blast them to the damn moon, you're gonna have somebody beyond just Senku with all these calculations. And Dr. Xeno has actually worked for NASA, and he knows all of this stuff, and he knows way more about rockets and thrusters than probably even Senku does, right? I mean, Senku's an expert with that kind of stuff, but that was literally Dr. Xeno's job for many years, okay? So, and as, like, so he was even stated by Gen earlier on in the arc, he was just like, oh, this guy's just like Senku, except he's like an adult Senku. Like, imagine Senku, right now I think he's 19 years old, he started the series when he was 16, but it's been like 3 years since then. But imagine if Senku, the light event never happened, and he just grew up, in modern society, and he was like 30 years old, how much more intelligent he would be at that point, like, the kind of guy he would be. That's kind of the basis for Dr. Xeno, except, of course, with the different kind of moralities that they share. I still love that. Dr. Xeno is just like, he's like, they're having this, like, a hypothetical conversation in the NASA break room one day. And it's just like, hey, Dr. Xeno, if you were sent back in time, hundreds of, I guess not hundreds of thousands of years, but if you were sent back in time, like, let's say 60,000 years to, like, the Stone Age, to, like, caveman society and stuff, what would you do? And Dr. Xeno's response is like, oh, I would enslave everybody with the power of science! I'm gonna go get some more coffee. Does anybody want more coffee? No, we're good. We're fine. We have donuts. Okay, I'm gonna go get more donuts and some coffee. So it's a very straightforward kind of morality there. It's just like, yes, I will use my superior intelligence to rule the world. But he seems like an okay guy. Did you see the scene in the last chapter? It was kind of nice, where after Dr. Xeno was kidnapped by Chrome and everybody, and they carry him away to some random island, Senku and Xeno finally meet in the current storyline, and there's a scene where Senku steps out and he's like, Dr. Xeno isn't that kind of man, because he's truly elegant. And then there's a close-up of Xeno's face that's just like, he said it! He understands the kind of guy I am. So, whatever. Anyway, couple of things about this arc. I like the premise, of course, traveling all over the world. You're globe-trotting now. Obviously, you're not going to be able to build up everything you're going to need in just Japan. So you got to get out there and you got to start doing stuff. Even in the last chapter, when the arc concluded, which I'm assuming it's concluded. I mean, at the end of the arc, at the end of the chapter, it was Corn City founded. I'm like, okay, I guess we're good. It was setting up some stuff for later on. There might be a wrap-up chapter or two to see what's going on with Stanley over on the ship after Stanley gets word of what's going on right now. now. But other than that, that seems to be the conclusion right there. Senku even kind of said to Xeno, he's just like, listen, man, I'm a busy guy. I got a lot of stuff to do. I freaking got sniper shot in the damn chest this arc. You know, we have like 5 other cities to build up in the world. We gotta get moving, all right? So you're coming with us, stealing your boat. Let's go. All right, so gotta get moving this along. I'm curious. I'm wondering if Inagaki got told by his editors, maybe, like, hey, are you gonna keep doing this? Because we kind of have to move this along, because this whole premise now in the story, this third part of Dr. Stone, the whole premise is traveling all over the world and setting up 5 cities. 5 cities! That's the roadmap to get to the shuttle point to get to the moon, alright? So maybe the editors said to Inagaki, like, hey man, you know, you gotta hurry this up, because we got 4 other cities to get to, and they're gonna have complicated arcs. Like, it's not as simple as just landing in Australia and just being like, alright, random koala, random wallaby, go about and build me an aluminum city. And then okay, cool, let's move on to Rubber City now. Over, I think it was set up on that map. I believe it was Corn City in the US, the Super Alloy City was in South America, which South America is purportedly where the Green Light event originated from. So yeah, now that has a little bit of less relevance now than you might think, because yeah, the event did begin, it did, like, the epicenter of it, ground zero, was in South America. But now that we find out that the Y-Man originated from the moon, it might be a situation where maybe the Y-Man, or whatever it is, an AI, a robot, whatever you want to say the final villain of this story is going to be, created the petrification device and then maybe dropped it on the Earth in a similar way that they dropped all the Medusas on the island. Dropped the Medusa, and maybe it just happened to land in South America. Like, that was just like he was on the moon, and just like freaking Rita Repulsa from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, like, make my monster grow, petrify the Earth, and just throws it like freaking fastballed at the Earth, and it just happened to land in South America, and it just happened to boom, and that was the epicenter. It could have been anywhere. It just happened to be how that went. That could possibly be the situation now. But of course, if they're going to go to South America next, which would make sense considering they're right now in like the Sacramento Valley right now in California, you know, to head down to South America, which purportedly the Super Alloy City would spring up, and then move across the Atlantic up to Europe, which is where the Math City was supposed to be, and then there was the Rubber City, which was like in India, Indonesia kind of area, and then Aluminum City was in Australia. I knew that. I'm just going to assume that wasn't just visual representation. That is literally where they are going to be going to set up each of these locations, right? And each of these locations is going to have a specific arc and, you know, troubles and everything. Now, I don't believe we can do the exact same thing we did with this arc. I mean, it kind of made sense the way Inagaki did this, where it's like, okay, you know, the reason why Stanley and Dr. Xeno were able to be in that location and were able to revive and everything right then and there, that makes perfect sense. It would also make sense that throughout the world there might be smaller pockets of people that are surviving, because when the petrification event happened, remember, before it all occurred, swallows were transformed first. Now, Senku noted this when he started, you know, his research into the petrification ray. He started looking at it. But obviously, if this occurred all over the world at once, swallows being petrified, obviously the government and like the CIA, the FBI, like all the major governments in the world would figure this shit out like pretty quickly. So that's why Dr. Xeno and Stanley and all the military and government guys were all gathered at that park, that national park in the US, to do research on this. So I can assume there's kind of situations with that all over the planet. I guess it really just comes down to the amounts of nitric acid that are located in the area, because the place that they were located had a high amount of nitric acid. So that's how they were able to, you know, free themselves from the stone. My thing is, you can't do this every single arc. You can't have every single arc like Senku goes to South America. Oh, they discover a scientist from South America that just happened to be awakened through nitric acid. Then they're gonna go to Europe. Oh, they just happened to find another scientist that woke up from nitric. So you can't do that. Although they do have the revival formula, so they could easily just go about and be like, okay, this guy looks smart, and then just awaken him that way. I guess they could do that. But my point is, like, each of these individual arcs, and I'm feeling, look, I'm just going by how I've seen this occur before whenever you're setting up like a bunch of these really big arcs, 5 arcs to set up cities. I feel like at least a few of these are going to be really skipped over or really glossed over. It reminds me of Toriko, when in Toriko they were setting up like the 8 different areas for the gourmet world, and they started Area 8, and we had a whole arc there, Area 7, whole arc there, Area 6, whole arc there, and then you hit the freaking gas pedal at one point. It's like, well, we can't cover the other ones, so Area 5, 4, 3, and 2 are pretty much just, It might be something like that. Get ready for that. It really just depends on, I guess, how the sales go, how good the arcs are, but we might get to a point where it's like, all right, we had the Corn City arc, we had the America arc, that lasted like, what was that, like, 20, 30-ish chapters? I think it was around 30-ish chapters this arc went on. I think it started in like March of this year, so that was a good, like, 6-7 months that lasted. Oh, okay, that's pretty good. We get to Super Alloy City, that might be a thing, and then it might be like, yeah, Math City, 5 chapters, we got it, Math City's set up, we're all right. Now, okay, Rubber City might last 10 chapters, okay, now we're on the Aluminum City. All right, cool. We have all the cities set up. All right, everybody's good. Copacetic. All right, we got a rocket. All right, let's go to the moon. It might be a situation like that where they might have to rush over some of these things just so we get to the exciting part of the story. Not saying, like, I want more Dr. Stone, honestly. Like Freedom, go crazy. You could give me, like, 30, 40 chapter arcs for each one of these cities. I'd be fine with that. I just feel from experience and the flow of the story, it might get accelerated at some point as it dictates, for the magazine and maybe the editors or something like that. That could always happen. So just keep that in mind. One thing that bugged me really hard about this arc, though, and I gotta bring it up right here, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to bring this up. How the hell did Dr. Xeno not figure out Nitol is the revival formula? Can we talk about that? Okay, Senku does give an explanation for that, because they arrived there, and that was a big point when Xeno and Senku's party, back when they thought, Dr. Taiju was the most intelligent. Of course, yes, I'm Dr. Taiju. I shall break this boulder with my face. With science! And my face. That was an interesting moment where they figured out, like, Dr. Xeno's like, yeah, we only have a few dozen people working for me, and they were basically the elite of the elite that were gathered at this one location, and we're all waking up with a certain concentration of nitric acid. However, you guys got a few dozen people working for you. So I highly doubt just a bunch of random people in Japan all had these really powerful wills. So Xeno figures out pretty early something is up and they have a revival formula. Senku says, oh, the reason why they didn't get a revival formula, even though they have a factory that creates, they can create all the necessary, they have platinum, they have freaking all the corn they need. But the reason Senku gives is the revival formula was not something that existed in the world before the petrification. Like in modern society, the concept of a revival formula never existed. That's why he never figured it out. But that doesn't make any sense, because, like, okay, when Senku woke up, he was by himself. There was nobody around him, okay? Except for a couple of monkeys. That was all he got, all right? So Senku wakes up completely alone in Japan, and he figures out pretty quickly something to do with nitric acid. Nitric acid woke me up, all right? But, even though he figured out it's going to take a really long time for the nitric acid itself to wake somebody up, and he, like, dragged Taiju underneath it, and then Taiju finally woke up, what was one of the first things that Senku says? Senku is experimenting on all the swallows, and one of the first things he comes up with was, like, man, if only we had some alcohol, then I'd be able to make, like, an industrial, like, not an adhesive, like an industrial, like, etching agent. That's nitol. That's what that is. By the way, don't make nitol. It's extremely flammable. Don't do it. He was basically pouring this extremely combustible material and all that. That's what the freaking, formula for it is. That's what, revival formula is. But my point is, like, Senku realizes this very early on. He's just like, okay, nitric acid has something to do with it. Maybe if I could make something a little bit more powerful based on nitric acid, like nitol, maybe that would work. Does Dr. Xeno just never arrive at that conclusion? That always bugged me. I get it. Dr. Xeno already had a bunch of people helping him out, so he wasn't alone when he woke up. He woke up with Stanley and all the people working for the government that were already there in the military, okay? And they already had platinum, okay? So it's like, okay, we don't have an immediate need to wake a bunch of people up, because I already have all the manpower I need, right? But you don't think that would have crossed his mind at some point, like, it's only a certain amount of nitric acid that'll allow you to wake up the statues. But it's not just nitric acid. There's something more to it than that. Whatever, I don't care. It's time to... I guess you could say he focused all of his time building his giant Disney World castle and setting up the tractors and building everything, the guns and everything. Like, he was more focused on that than gaining more manpower or solving the petrification mystery. He was more interested in just building up all of that stuff. Maybe. But just the fact that he's a scientist and Night Owl never even like, oh, Night Owl! Combining nitric acid with alcohol! Making this really well-known etching agent. Man, I never even thought of that! Wow! And I have a factory that can literally make, like, gallons of the shit! Wow, that's nuts. That's crazy. 3 years being freed in this stone world never occurred to me a single time to even attempt to make that. Which is insane. The revival formula is actually really easy to make. It's actually so easy to make. When Senku and Tsukasa were having their little beef at the beginning of the story, Senku just tells Tsukasa, like, yeah, mix Night Owl and alcohol together at this ratio. But Tsukasa's not a scientist. He's a freaking boxer for a living. He figured it out, you know? So it's not even hard to make. I just laugh that Xeno never even occurred to him. He's like, revival formula? That can't exist. And in the last chapter, when Senku just declares it to the entire colony, he's like, yeah, there you go. Night Owl, just make it. The people on my crew know how to make it. It's super easy. Just there you go. And everyone's like, oh, it was that simple? Maybe that was setting up kind of a joke. Maybe it was setting up a joke. Like, oh, it was that simple the whole time and they never even realized it. I don't know. Maybe it's kind of setting up that, you know, Senku and Xeno have different moralities and they have different perspectives on what's important. Where Xeno, being an adult, maybe his first thing upon being awoke was like, okay, I want to build up a fortress, let's get farming, let's get machinery, let's get guns, let's get all that stuff in the traditional American way. He was more focused on that stuff rather than what Senku was focused on. Maybe. But that always bugged me. That just really bugged me they didn't figure that out. Alright, so, the ending of this. Yeah, let's talk about the ending of this. Okay, so, last chapter. What are we just doing that? Okay. So they capture Dr. Xeno, they get him away. Kaseki and Frankos and Luna, they all manage to get away from the Perseus. The Perseus still under siege by Stanley, so he's still there. Nikki, Kinro, they're all bound up, you know, by Stanley and everything. But Kaseki and Frankos and Luna manage to get away. They rendezvous with Senku's group, you know, Chrome and Kohaku and Gen are there and everybody. They have freaking Xeno. And then they're like, okay, we got to get a move on here. So they steal Xeno's boat, which is kind of, you know, that also is a thing that, like, all right, the Perseus is gone. I mean, that sucks, because it's like we spent, I guess, not super long building the Perseus, but we had like a little mini arc just to build the Perseus. And the whole reason they named it the Perseus is after, like, oh, the Greek figure that slayed the Medusa, and it's this symbolic thing, and then they sail off through the Pacific, and now it's like, well, we lost the Perseus, well, what are you gonna do? Just gonna take this yacht instead, let's rock and roll! A boat is a boat at the end of the day. They just need a place to get where they're going. And honestly speaking here, Xeno's boat might be better than the Perseus. Might be faster anyway. Might have a lot more amenities to it. But it just sucks. We're trading off the Perseus. You know what I mean? Maybe we'll get back to it later. Maybe they'll like, we christen this boat, the Perseus 2. And Xeno's like, it has a name already. Like, too bad. It's the Perseus 2. I'm like, whatever. Ukyo's there as well. So they're leaving. And it's like, okay, but guys, Stanley, we can't just leave everybody. Stanley still has everybody captured on the Perseus. Stanley could literally kill all of our friends, like Nikki and Kinro and Giro. They just kill them all. We can't just leave, you know? And so that's when Senku does the exchange here, the diplomatic relations, where he's like, hey, we want to make a trade. So he calls up Brody, the guy that is very sensible, the guy that works for Xeno. You know, they talked about it with Gen and Chrome. And he's like, we need somebody to talk to in the enemy camp that is pretty, you know, like amenable to like diplomacy. That's not just going to immediately hang up when we call. And it's like, yeah, that's probably Brody. That guy Brody, he seems like a pretty lighthearted, nice guy, and he'll listen to what we have to say. So they call up Brody, and he's like, yeah, guys, you know, you want to do a trade-off? Well, we have more of the cards. Yeah, you have Dr. Xeno, But, you know, we have all, like, literally pretty much everybody on your crew, plus we have your ship and your base of operations. So that's when Senku trades off the information for the Nidal, the revival formula. Make revival formula! And Senku just starts barking orders to Brody and the entirety of Xeno's crew, not crew, I'm more One Piece on the brain, there's their entire colony of just like, yeah, that's the revival fluid. Now, here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna take Xeno on a little field trip. What I'm gonna want from you guys, build up a massive corn city. Aim for about 1 million people at first, and then, you know, we can start reviving people more after that. We're gonna go off into the world and do some other stuff. Cool. Click. I mean, like, and at the end of the chapter, we have Nikki and everybody freed from their bonds, holding up the flag and being like, Corn City founded! And they do mention Stanley, because it's like, Brody's like, Stanley's not gonna go for that. Stanley will hunt you down until the ends of the earth. He will chase you to hell and back to get Xeno. You will not be able to sleep at night. And then Senku's like, well, I guess we're just gonna have to keep giving him the slip until after we're through hell itself, I guess. We gotta get moving. Click. It's like, let me ask you a question. I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe I missed something. I read the chapters. Maybe I missed something along the way. I don't know, but what is stopping Xeno's group from just being like, no. No. He's like, Senku calls them, is like, okay, here's the revival formula. Revive a bunch of people, make a city, it's Corn City, get about 1 million people. What's to stopping Brody and Stanley and everybody from just being like, no, you don't boss us around. If you don't come back with Xeno right now, we're going to burn down your ship and kill every single one of your friends. And that's going to happen in an hour if you don't get him back here right now. Maybe we'll establish that more in the later chapters. Maybe we'll have because we didn't really get a lot of Stanley in the last chapter. Really none at all. We didn't really get a lot of scenes with him. So that might be a thing, and maybe Senku has a plan against that, but I'm trying to sit there and think, like, did I miss something? Is there a reason why they can't do that? Like, they have Xeno, so they can always be like, oh, well, if you kill the members of our crew, we're going to kill Xeno. But I think Stanley, more than anybody, would kind of be aware of, like, no, you won't. No, you won't. You don't even have guns, really. Well, no, not really. I mean, like, you're not the kind of people to kill it. No. I think Stanley, this seasoned military veteran, would know when someone's calling a bluff. So they wouldn't be able to even do that. They wouldn't be like, oh, well, if you burn the Perseus and kill all of our crew, we'll kill Xeno, and then you won't have a scientist. Stanley would be like, no, I'm calling your bluff on that one. You're not going to do shit. See, I don't know. It's just like a very tenuous thing where they would go about it. I mean, and also, you're removing their chief scientist. Now, there might be other people there, like Brody is a mechanic. I mean, there's a lot of really smart people there and military operatives there at the base. So it's not like Xeno's the only one that knows how all this shit works. But he's their chief, he was their leader and their chief scientific officer, and you're removing him. You know, I'm sure Brody would probably take over as, like, the new, like, I'm sure it wouldn't collapse that way, like, the infrastructure, but it's like they obviously probably wouldn't be able to do as much with not Xeno being there. But like I said, at the end of the day, we got to get moving. I mean, we got a lot of other stuff on the plate here. I mean, we got to still investigate South America. We got 4 more big-ass cities we need to establish. So we can't be in the States forever. I get it. Are they even leaving the U.S. right now? Are they taking that yacht and they just going to swing down the freaking West Coast and go all the way down to South America? Are they going to go further into the U.S.? Do they need anything in the U.S.? I guess not. Are they going to make some? I guess they're going to have to make some pit stops along the way. What about all the provisions and supplies that was on the Perseus? Yes, they do have the lab cart. They have the lab car because we saw that pull that into the boat that they stole and then leave. But what about fuel? Like, they're going to need more fuel for the ship at some point, right? And they're going to be going into uncharted areas where it's not exposed. So I just have a lot of questions. I just have a lot of questions here. Yeah, you got Xeno. Yeah, you got Senku working together because he's basically going to have to work together with them if he wants to survive. And after Xeno maybe hears the whole story, maybe Senku's going to explain to him, like, listen, there's a guy on the moon that turned the whole world into stone. We're going to try to figure out who he is. We need to build a rocket, so we need to go all over the world and do this shit. And Xeno's going to be, he's going to end up being an ally. But Stanley's going to be a little bit of a harder sell, I think. So, yeah, let me know. Like, I don't know. I could always be missing something huge here. Maybe there was something I didn't read, or maybe I breezed through a chapter or something. Like, oh, that's why they did this. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, that's good. Okay. But I, for one, have a few questions from this that I hope is answered answered in the coming chapters. So yeah, anyway, I think this is already a pretty good video, but I love the arc. I like the arc where we're at right now, and I hope to see where this is going. And yeah, I guess moving on to South America. Maybe not in the next chapter, maybe have a few follow-up post-chapter, post-arc things, but I guess that's where we're heading next. So anyway, yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking and Barry signing out. This is the second time this week I had to draw on my face. I just realized that Mashal and Dr. Stone should probably have a crossover at some point. Yeah, I think that can make that work. Have a good one, everybody. Signing out.